So what's the difference between Art Nouveau and Art Deco? This is something that a lot of people get confused. Well, they're both what we would call design styles. People normally think of them as architectural styles, and they are, but they're more than that too. It was architecture, clothing, furniture, even jewelry can be categorized as Art Nouveau or Art Deco. The earlier of the two movements was Art Nouveau, which is what you're looking at right now, some examples of that. This movement lasted from about the 1880s to right up until World War I, so about the 1910s. So a good idea, and if you've watched any of my other art videos, you know this. The first thing you've always got to ask is, well, what was happening in the world around this time period? And around this time period, it was the Industrial Revolution. Mass production was kind of like the big thing, and the Art Nouveau movement was a reaction or a movement against that. I think a helpful way to think of it is as a bridge between neoclassicism, which we've been looking at a lot of neoclassicist paintings recently, a bridge between that and then modernism. And how do you distinguish what an Art Nouveau piece of art is, whether that's a building or a piece of furniture or anything? I would use these words to characterize something that's Art Nouveau: fluidness, sinuous, lithe, curvy, intricate, decorative, flowery. And by flowery, I mean there was a lot of kind of natural elements incorporated into Art Nouveau pieces, like the patterns that are created by vines or the shape of flowers themselves. Those things are very often manifested in Art Nouveau buildings or other pieces of artwork. Also, in terms of the construction of the architecture, you're going to be seeing a lot of like parabolas, semicircle type shapes. And here's a good example of that, the Eiffel Tower. Also, Tiffany lamps are considered quintessentially Art Nouveau. So let's move on now to the second movement, Art Deco. Art Deco came a little bit later, lasted from about 1920 up until World War II, so sometime in the 1930s. So think of what this time period was like. It was very, it was the Jazz Age. It was that kind of aesthetic, um, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Great Gatsby kind of stuff was going on. So Art Deco was a very eclectic style. As opposed to Art Nouveau, and remember the words that I used to characterize that, Art Deco is characterized by words like geometric, streamlined, sleek, and it incorporated a lot of these new industrialized materials, things that had never really been seen before in art or architecture, things like chrome, plastic, stainless steel. And then if we're looking for shapes, like what we would typically see in architecture, it's less parabolic, less semicircular, and more zigzags in broad curves. And here you've now been looking at some examples of Art Deco architecture and pieces of work. I guess maybe in my opinion, Art Nouveau tends to look a little bit more elegant, whereas Art Deco just looks a little bit more old-fashioned, and that's obviously just my own opinion, and that's a generalization. Art Deco can look very elegant as well, but when you kind of think of like like these old movie theaters or some of these skyscrapers that were built earlier in the 20th century, those are Art Deco. Whereas when you think of the kind of more elegant European styles of architecture, that's typically more characteristic of Art Nouveau. A lot of different variety. Two styles that are related to one another and, like I said, very often confused. I hope that this has maybe cleared up a little bit of the ambiguity. Thanks for watching, and make sure you subscribe so you can increase your appreciation for art with a new video every week. Sounds like a good deal to me. See you next week, everybody. Thanks again for watching.